7 ways to stay connected with your audience during a podcast hiatus. Welcome to the Audacity to Podcast, episode 293. Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Audacity to Podcast. I'm Daniel J. Lewis, and this is the award-winning in-depth podcast about podcasting. It's where I give you the guts and teach you the tools to launch or improve your own podcast for sharing your passions and finding success. Before I get into the content of this episode, I'm excited to tell you about a fun giveaway. That's right, not discount codes or Black Friday sales or anything like that, but actual giveaways of stuff that I normally charge larger amounts for, like Podcasters Society, SEO for Podcasters, my social subscribe and follow icons plugin for WordPress, and my podcast reviews. I'll be giving away licenses and access to these things as something that I'm calling 12 Days of Pod Christmas giveaway. So if you're interested in that, then please go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas. Every day, there will be a new giveaway between December 14th through December 25th. And it will be fun. There will be a new opportunity for you to win each day. And even if you're already a customer, paying customer of those other services and products, there's still opportunity for you to win. So check that out, sign up for the notifications, and go every day between December 14th and December 25th to participate in the 12 Days of Pod Christmas giveaway over there at theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas. It will be over $3,000 worth of stuff that I'm giving away. And these are actual costs for these things. That's what it's worth. That's what you would pay if you signed up for this yourself through different methods and bought these things yourself. Over $3,000 worth of stuff that I'm giving away. And it's something I want to do to give to you. Instead of trying to sell you something, I want to give you something. And this will be a fun way to do it. And you'll get extra points too if you share the giveaway as well. That's over at theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas through December 25th, 2016. Now, whether you're planning a holiday break, a seasonal hiatus, or you need some time off with your podcast, there are some different ways and things you can do to still stay connected with your audience so that they will anticipate your show's return, so that they'll keep your podcast in mind. And when they're looking at their podcast subscriptions, they won't think, oh, I haven't seen an episode from this one in a while, I'm going to unsubscribe. But you want to keep those people subscribed to your podcast, even if you have to take a long break for a little while. So I have for you 7 ways to stay connected with your audience during a podcast hiatus. If you want to follow along in the show notes for this episode, number 293, then go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay connected. First, the overview. Number 1, set expectations. Number 2, point to active social accounts. Number 3, pre-produce miniature content. Number 4, use an email newsletter or autoresponder. Number 5, participate in an online community. Number 6, offer direct contact. And number 7, pick what's doable and fitting. Please comment, share this episode, and follow along in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay connected. Let's dig into this. Number 1, set expectations. If your hiatus will skip more than one episode, I recommend communicating a plan with your audience. Your plan could be as simple as we won't have any episodes until we return on such and such date. That tells your audience then to, obviously, not expect episodes during that hiatus, but that they can expect you to return on a specific date or around that date. Like you may even simply say, we are returning in March or in February or whatever, or we're returning on March 25th, 2016. Anything like that can work for you and your audience to set that expectation, that goal. Or if you choose any of the tips that I'll share with you as I go on through this episode to stay connected with your audience, then communicate that so that you're setting those expectations. You could say something like, I won't be here in the podcast, but I will be active in whatever that place is, depending on which of these tips that you decide to implement with your own strategy. I recommend that you give advanced warning about the hiatus when the hiatus also affects your audience, such as a TV show fan podcast or holiday break or something like that. They know it's coming up and they're probably starting to wonder, what are you planning to do during that hiatus? If you're taking a short hiatus, maybe a couple weeks off for a vacation or holiday break or something like that, like I talked about in the previous episode about holiday breaks, you may not need to prepare your audience for that ahead of time. But in either case, if you are giving them advanced warning or not, I highly recommend that you release some kind of currently on hiatus miniature episode. And then when you return, you can remove that episode from your feed. That way, when people subscribe or when they look at your podcast in iTunes or other podcast apps or directories, they won't simply see this large gap from the last time you published your episode and start to think, I wonder if they're really consistent and serious about their podcast. But they'll see, and I recommend put as much detail as you can in the short title. It might say something like, on hiatus, will return on such and such date. Something like that, so that it communicates to your prospective new subscribers, as well as communicates to your existing audience that they can hear that episode and know that you are on hiatus. That's what I will be doing when I take a little hiatus for the birth of my first child, Noodle Baby. So that's number one. Set expectations and apply that to whatever you decide to do. And it's really up to you what you think is fitting and appropriate and that is possible. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. But the most important thing is to set those expectations for your audience so they don't give up on you and so that they don't think you gave up on them. Tip number 2, point to active social accounts or a social account. It's easy to post on social networks like Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, and such. Allow you to stay engaged with your audience without requiring a lot of production or preparation. I don't recommend promoting every social account you have. You may have a dozen or more: Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, Google+, Pinterest, YouTube, all of these other places. Pat Flynn has been known for saying the phrase, be everywhere. I like to say it this way: be everywhere you can be well. Thus, instead of pointing to a dozen different places people could follow you, and then you struggle to keep up with posting and engaging on those different places, point to 1 or 2 places where you can definitely stay engaged, post content regularly, respond to people. It's places that you check. With very few places then to manage, it's easy to post frequently. And that can be whatever you want it to be, whatever you think your audience might enjoy. If you want to try something new, like maybe Anchor or Bumpers or something else like that, or Clamor or anything, then that gives you an opportunity to do that. And it can be that great opportunity to really force you to build your following and engage on that particular platform and get good at posting and using that particular platform, whatever that platform is. Point your audience to that 1 or 2 different places that you can be well during the hiatus, if you're able to do that. And it can be really easy. And these things don't have to be highly produced. Like Snapchat or Instagram stories, you can simply pull out your phone and yes, it's vertical video, but it's going to be viewed on a vertical device. So it's fine to have vertical video there. But you could share a quick update. What's going on? Share a little behind the scenes. Show them what you're working on. Show them what you're doing. It's okay if it doesn't really relate to the professional branding aspect of your show. Now, it should in some way, would be great. But it's okay if you're just showing life. You're staying connected with your audience and you're allowing your audience to get to know you better and stay engaged and continue building the relationship. Whatever that place is, please don't overwhelm your audience with telling them to follow you and connect with you and subscribe and all of this other stuff in a dozen different places. Narrow it down to 1 or 2 places you can be well and point to those during your hiatus. You can tell people we're going on a hiatus with our podcast. We'll be back at such and such date, but you can connect with us in the meantime and we'll be very active over on whatever social network. Or you point them to your site where they click on the link. Or it's something like myawesomepodcast.com/Twitter instead of telling them go to Twitter, myawesomepodcast, anything like that. This is number 2, point to active social accounts. Number 3, pre-produce miniature content. A full podcast episode can be a lot of hard work, and you know that. During a hiatus, one of the things that you could do is scale back your commitment as long as you've set the expectations with your audience. Think of it this way. Imagine if your favorite podcasts took a 3-month hiatus. Would you prefer to hear nothing from them until they return? Or would you rather get tiny bits from them to hold you over until they return? Your audience might feel the same about your podcast. Maybe they want what little bit they can get from you. Now, miniature content can be short podcast episodes, blog posts, an email series, informal videos, live events, and anything else that doesn't take much time but maintains that relationship with your audience. It's that, as they say sometimes in marketing, that touch, that little touch here and there, just saying, hey, I'm still here. Hey, I'm still here. Hey, here's a little thing for you. Hey, I'm still here, and here's something you might enjoy in the meantime until I come back fully. Such miniature content can then be fairly easily pre-produced and scheduled for automatic release during the hiatus, whether that's blog posts, short podcast episodes, anything like that. Yes, your podcast episode could be 2 hours long per episode, but what if during a hiatus, maybe it's a 3-month hiatus, so that might give you 12 normal times when you would release an episode. What if you do 12 one-minute episodes with a short tip or some short snippet, something really small that you share with your audience? And in each of those episodes, you might say, I'm on hiatus, or you might say, this is a mini series I'm doing. I hope you enjoy. And then that can be timeless content that can continue to be enjoyed afterward, even though you were on a very short hiatus or long hiatus, and you shared very short content. This is number 3, pre-produce miniature content. Number 4, use an email newsletter or autoresponder. An autoresponder is when someone joins your email list, they start a sequence from the beginning. It's not where you send out a broadcast on a particular day each week, and then whoever is subscribed gets that same email. This would be where you have created content ahead of time, and then anyone who joins starts that sequence of events. So you could have 1,000 people on your list, or let's simplify this and say you have 10 people on your list getting your series of 10 different emails, and each one of those 10 people today may receive a different email because someone joined 10 weeks ago, someone joined 2 weeks ago, someone joined today, but they are still going through the same sequence of emails. That's an autoresponder sequence or an autoresponder series. Most email programs can let you do this. And if you're looking for a great email program or service, then I recommend MailChimp, Aweber, or ConvertKit. And I have affiliate links to each of those in the show notes for this episode, number 293, at theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay connected. And if you don't already have a list, then this could be a great time to start one. I've done an episode previously about 13 different ways you can use an email list, and there are many other ways too that you can use an email list. It doesn't have to be marketing, trying to sell stuff, anything like that. Even during a hiatus, you can use an email list and you can work on building your email list. Your emails could be behind-the-scenes stories, short tips, or anything else that would be relevant to your audience. It could be like miniature content, but it's something you set up for your email, and it can then be something you recycle later on and continue to offer as a special thing for people who join your email list. That's number 4, use an email newsletter or autoresponder. Number 5, participate in an online community. Whether you or someone else own the online community, participating in it during a hiatus can be a great way to continue the relationship with your fans. It can also help you build your reputation, authority, influence, and thus each of those things could result in gaining new subscribers. Plus, it gives you new opportunities, new inspiration, new ideas for when your podcast returns. Take notes on things. If you see the same question asked very frequently during your hiatus, then you can know that, well, when I return, maybe I should create content that answers this question. Or you get ideas for people you could have on your podcast. Or it's a way to keep you motivated to still continue the podcast after the hiatus. Because I know sometimes when you've been away for a while, you kind of get that post-vacation blues or sadness, and you feel like, I don't want to do this work again. This can be a way to keep you inspired as well as stay connected with your audience and potentially even grow your audience. That's number 5. Participate in an online community. Number 6, offer direct contact. You may decide maintaining a public connection with your audience through social accounts, an online community, or anything like that isn't right for you and for your show. So if you want to still stay connected with your audience, but not in a public way, consider offering a way for your audience to contact you directly. For example, you could say, if you need help while we're on hiatus, please email us directly and we'll reply when we can. Or you could say, message me on Twitter or call me at this phone number or whatever. This doesn't mean you have to be sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, waiting for someone to contact you through one of these direct methods. But it can be a way to show your accessibility to what extent you're able to offer and still maintain that connection with your audience. And number 7, pick what's doable and fitting for you and your show. Going into a hiatus is not a good time to overcommit yourself. You may decide, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to go on this hiatus, and every day we're going to have a 1-minute episode to hold people over for the hiatus. Well, that could be way too much of a commitment for you and take you too much time to try and get started. And then while you're on hiatus, trying to get these things published for you. When I had first started the Audacity podcast, I was engaged to my beautiful wife. Well, she wasn't my wife then. She became my wife. She's my wife now and the mother of our son or daughter. Don't know yet. But I just started the Audacity podcast and we were about to get married. So I decided I want to still release some episodes while I'm away on my honeymoon because I'm still in the very early stage of my podcast trying to build my brand and reputation. So I pre-recorded some content and scheduled that for release then, as well as for my Clean Comedy podcast. And what was a bit sad looking back on it, but my wife was very supportive, was during our honeymoon, there were a couple times where I had to pull out my laptop and make sure that the episode published or finish editing an episode and publish it online. I didn't like having to do that on the honeymoon, but that was something that I had committed to, and realistically, I overcommitted. I really should have scheduled that or finished what I could beforehand and scheduled that for automatic release, but I didn't get to it in time. I overcommitted myself for the expectations I was setting that there would be full episodes released during that time. Regardless of what you choose to do during a hiatus, remember that number 1 tip: set expectations. You need to communicate to your audience. Let them know what's going to happen so that they know what to expect. Can they expect new episodes during the hiatus? Can they expect to stay engaged with you? Can they expect silence? Can they expect that you will return with the podcast at a particular date or around some particular time? Set those expectations. And then these other tips are things you could consider implementing to stay connected with your audience during your podcast hiatus. Again, these things are available in the show notes for episode 293 at theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay connected. They are: number 1, set expectations. Number 2, point to active social accounts. Number 3, pre-produce miniature content. Number 4, use an email newsletter or autoresponder. Number 5, participate in an online community. Number 6, offer direct contact. And number 7, pick what's doable and fitting. If you haven't noticed, I'm sharing much of what I'm planning to do with the Audacity podcast while I go on my hiatus for the birth of our firstborn child. I don't know when the baby will actually be born. I have a rough guess on dates and due dates and all of that stuff, but you can imagine how this stuff goes. We don't always know the exact date. So I am planning to not overcommit myself during this time because it will be a radical change in my life. I do have certain boundaries in place because the podcast is part of my business. And because my business then is run off-site, I don't anticipate, and I really know that I have boundaries in place so that having a baby will not mean the death of my podcast. I will still continue the podcast. However, I will be taking a hiatus, and you can follow me on Twitter or Instagram at the Daniel J. Lewis, and that's where I will probably be the most active during the meantime. But also during that time, because this is the last episode before that hiatus, you can get on the 12 days of Pod Christmas giveaways by going to theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas, and that will be an opportunity for you to win some cool things. It'll be stuff like a free membership to Podcaster Society, free account on my podcast reviews, a free premium account, that is. that you can use for commercial podcasts and get all of the premium benefits, SEO for podcasters, my WordPress plugin, and maybe some other bonuses thrown in here and there. It's over $3,000 worth of stuff. And that is no joke or exaggeration. If you were to buy these things, their maximum cost would be $3,000, depending on which plans you would choose on these different things. So it is definitely worth more than $3,000. And I might throw in even more to give away during the 12 days of Pod Christmas. So if you are interested in that, then go to theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas, and you can sign up right now to get notified when the giveaways start. And then you'll be notified each day of the 12 days of Pod Christmas to submit your name and email address for the giveaway, because each day there will be a new drawing and a new giveaway each day. So don't enter only once, enter each day for a chance to win. And if you're already a paying customer of any one of these things, then there will be ways that will work it out so that you still get the benefits of winning. Like if you are a member of Podcaster Society right now, then we'll extend your membership for an additional year so that you still get to take advantage of winning that free year membership to Podcaster Society. That and other fun stuff will be going on at theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas. The giveaway is December 14th through December 25th. theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas. I'm looking forward to the fun that this will be and to the opportunity to give you some stuff too. And speaking of giving stuff, I want to thank some people who gave me kind reviews for the Audacity to Podcast in iTunes. Break B, who didn't leave a full name or a podcast name, so unfortunately I can't link to them, but you're welcome to comment in the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay-connected, and I'll update the show notes with a link to Break B's podcast. But Break B wrote in the iTunes USA store, I learned a lot from Daniel. Daniel's show has definitely made me a better podcaster. He just makes you want to have a better podcast. I like how he lays everything out simply. His show notes are light years better than mine, which I'm working on. If you are a content producer, you definitely want to add this to your listening rotation. And Sophie, host of the EdTech podcast at theedtechpodcast.com, wrote in the United Kingdom iTunes store, a truly valuable resource for podcasters. Daniel has developed for the podcasting community a vast array of in-depth practical resources through which to deliver great content and to innovate as the medium develops. Thanks, Daniel. Well, thank you, Sophie. Now, Sophie, because she did mention the name of her podcast and it's in her iTunes name, I was able to look up her podcast, and here's a little sample of the EdTech podcast.
Hi, I'm Michelle Thomas, and you're listening to the EdTech podcast. Actually, what is this that I'm sitting on? She says it's the iPads. I says, what do you mean the iPads?
Hi everyone, and welcome to the EdTech podcast. A big shout out to the team behind the Nordic EdTech conference, which I'll be chairing in early December, plus Hannah Wilson at Women Ed, who recorded an epic near 2-hour chat with me this week. This week's podcast is with Michelle Thomas, Executive Head at the New Wave Federation of 3 primary schools in Hackney, London. We're in conversation about leadership, ed balls, being an Australian in Stokey, boiler maintenance, being a working mum, and taking a school from special measures to outstanding.
Along the way, we've managed to create a really strong vision around, that we're redefining learning.
So if that interests you, then check out Sophie's podcast over at theedtechpodcast.com. And big thanks, Sophie and Break B, for those kind reviews in iTunes. I really appreciate those. They really encourage me, and they help other people decide to listen to the podcast. And it gives me that opportunity to give a shout out to your podcast too. So if you'd like to review the Audacity to Podcast, then the link is over at theaudacitytopodcast.com. And yes, I use my own service, My Podcast Reviews, to get all of my international podcast reviews sent to me automatically from iTunes, Stitcher, and soon other podcast apps that have reviews as well. If this episode helped you, you think it would help others, or you have some comments for this content and some of your own experience to share, then please go to the show notes at theaudacitytopodcast.com/stay-connected. And remember to sign up for the 12 Days of Pod Christmas giveaways. The link is there in the show notes, as well as at theaudacitytopodcast.com/podchristmas. I will be going on hiatus for the birth of my firstborn son or daughter. Don't know yet, but I'm really looking forward to getting to meet them after being a dad for the last several months. Just haven't gotten to meet the baby that I'm a father to. That will be really exciting. I'm looking forward to it. It will be life-changing and very, very special and miraculous. In the meantime, I will be on Twitter at the Daniel J. Lewis and on Instagram at the Daniel J. Lewis as well. Now that I've given you some of the guts and taught you some of the tools, it's time for you to go launch or improve your own podcast for sharing your passions and finding success. Thanks for listening, and have a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. The Audacity to Podcast is a proud member of Noodle Mix Network. Find more of our award-winning and award-nominated podcasts make you think, laugh, and succeed at noodle.mx. The Audacity to Podcast is also a